Religion and religious liberties and freedom obviously play a very important part in our lives. They play a very important part of our clients' lives, of our patients' lives. And there are a lot of issues that come up. People that are marching in Charlottesville and ripping down or fighting against statues and ramming cars into each other and all of that, they go to hospitals too. And hospitals sometimes have to treat these people who have discriminatory beliefs and practices, sometimes couched within religious context. What do you do? Francine, tell us a little bit about patients that have discriminatory demands couched in religious requirements.
And it happens all the
time.
What
happens?
All the time. Patients come in, especially I worked at an inner city hospital where we had so many cultures and religions represented within the hospital community. So patients would come in all the time and say, a female patient would say, my religious beliefs dictate that a male cannot examine me. I must have a female doctor. So long it wasn't an emergency situation and a female doctor was available, we would always try to honor patients' wishes, even if they might seem discriminatory. Sometimes a patient might say, I don't want a physician of such and such religion taking care of me. We actually had a reverse situation once where a Muslim resident went around to other Muslim patients saying, do you know that's a Jewish doctor taking care of you? You really wouldn't want that Jewish doctor to take care of you. So that resident was dealt with from an employment practice standard. But with patients who made these...
You had the Jewish lawyer who...
Exactly.
Yeah, I
took care of it. But with patients who made these requests, yes, very often those requests were honored because we cared about our patient satisfaction scores. And the reason we cared about our patient satisfaction scores is that if you had poor patient satisfaction scores, your payments for Medicare could be decreased. So effectively, the government was encouraging us to honor potentially discriminatory requests from patients. But it was done.
What would you do with a racial request of someone saying, I demand to see a medical professional the same race as myself?
Patient satisfaction. You want to keep your patients happy. And if it were possible, if it were not an emergency situation, and if it were possible.
Art, what do you say?
We say screw them. Generally speaking, at NYU, we don't honor that. I've had a few of my residents try to institute policies that are a little more tolerant, but unless it's medically relevant, I'll give you an example. We've had PTSD people come in. They want somebody, if possible, to talk to a psychiatrist or psychologist or social worker who has some experience of the military or maybe even deployed. That might be medically relevant. There are occasionally the women's situation where somebody says it's a matter of shame or fear or whatever. It causes me problems in terms, not just culturally, but it might even interfere with my ability to speak openly. But generally speaking, on the race issue, religion issue, ethnicity issue, we don't accommodate. We basically say, this is who we've got to care for you. It would cause a lot of turmoil for us across the board, even outside the ER, to try and handle all these demands. That said, if you went to a primary care doctor and said, I want a left-handed Ukrainian mathematician to take care of me, don't care. You can, sort of sort out at the front end of healthcare. There's time to pick and choose. You can indulge your bigotry or your taste or your preferences. Related to that, we do have situations where, for women, more and more, we're trying to put people into the examining room because of issues that have come up about intimidation, abuse. The field isn't doing a good job protecting its patients always, so those issues are there as well. But generally speaking, I understand the satisfaction drive, but I don't understand why we would redistribute resources in the name of bigotry.
Rabbi.
I think that I would half screw them, to pick the term. It's important to distinguish between patient demands that strike us as reasonably related to healthcare. It's not uncommon, I chair the ethics committee in a hospice, that patients ask for doctors who speak their native language. And we generally respond to that by recognizing the reasonableness of this, even though all patient care nominally takes place in English. The truth is that speaking to a physician who understands your native language, and sometimes your native language is Yiddish. And it turns out that most of the physicians who speak Yiddish are Jewish. Deceased, but those who are alive are Jewish or Spanish. These cultural familiarities have some validity. Patients frequently want somebody who understands their shorthand and their culture, and it's well within the rights of a hospital to accommodate a patient who has a reasonable cultural accommodation, whether it's linguistic or even female patients expressing a desire not to have this exam done by a male physician. We recognize the reasonableness of a variety of these accommodations. The assertion, on the other hand, of race probably shouldn't be accommodated at all. And so too religion, unless it's in the context of certain cultural transitions that we recognize as reasonable. The underlining idea I think the Jewish tradition puts forward is this request for accommodation related to providing superior medical care? Having a physician who speaks your native language is not a ridiculous request, and it's not something that should be casually denied in the name of equality. Asking a woman to undergo some medical procedures through a woman physician is not unreasonable. And by the way, having a male urologist is also not unreasonable. On the other hand, asking that you only be treated at Beth Israel, to go to the Simpsons clip, that strikes us as more unreasonable and more problematic in the Jewish tradition. I think that you need more cultural understanding to grasp whether what the patient is asking for is arbitrary prejudice or reasonably related to the health care of the patient. Even if it's not directly health care related, it's related to the patient's linguistic limitations, related to the patient's privacy limitations. These are things that not just relate to patient satisfaction, but reasonably relate to patient care and ought to be accommodated.
So let me take it up one notch. As The Simpsons showed us, there are many religious affiliations in hospitals, and there also have been a tremendous number of mergers over the past decade, 20 years. Catholic hospitals represent probably about 40% of all the hospitals and nursing homes in the US. When mergers happen, one of the ethics questions becomes how much do we accommodate the secular or the non-Catholic entity in terms of policies? So you can see your in vitro fertilization program disappear due to a merger, not an individual choice. Obviously, abortion becomes less available. There are also issues that even come up about the removal of artificial hydration and food. Hysterectomies. So there are a number of issues where when we think about accommodating, it's had to be built into some contract negotiations. I don't know if you've lived through these, but I have, where somebody says, okay, we're going to merge the hospitals, but we're going to have this little private office down the street that happens to do IVF, and it won't really be part of this entity corporate-wise, but it'll be down there. One point I'll make is I always feel that it is obligatory to tell people all their options. That is, even if you were opposed morally to abortion, to use the toughest one, you still need to say, here are your choices.